You're at the table. 6 people, 1 conversation. And you've had the sentence ready for about 40 seconds now. It's better than the last 3 things anyone said. You're waiting for the gap. And the gap comes, and somebody else takes it. And the topic moves, and your sentence is now the wrong sentence. So you put it down. Your face stays pleasant. Nobody notices anything happened, because nothing did. You're in the meeting. Someone says something about the timeline you know is wrong because you've been quietly tracking it for 3 weeks. Your hand doesn't move. You run the math instead. How long it'd take, whether it lands as helpful or as correcting. By the time the ledger balances, the decision is made. You'll fix it later, alone, in the file.
You're in the car with someone you love. They've asked what's wrong, you've said nothing, and both of you know that's a lie. The real answer is sitting right there behind your teeth, fully formed. 11 seconds. You feel your jaw actually tighten. You look at the road. And then you get home. You take your shoes off, and the whole day's worth of unsaid things arrives at once. Every clean line, every correction, every honest sentence, and you deliver all of it perfectly, out loud, to nobody. This is for you if you've ever been called quiet, like it was a diagnosis. If people have told you they can't read you. If you've left a room and immediately started talking, silently and brilliantly, to the version of the room that no longer exists. Your silence isn't shyness, and it isn't a missing skill. It's a decision, one you're making hundreds of times a day, so fast you've stopped experiencing it as a decision. And there are 2 completely different things wearing that same quiet face. One built your best qualities. The other is quietly costing you people. By the end, you'll know which is which and what to do about it. Let's start with the thing almost nobody says out loud. In 2007, a team led by Matthias Mayle at the University of Arizona, with Samin Vaziri, Nairon Ramirez Esparza, Richard Slatcher, and James Pennebaker, published a study in Science. They strapped recorders to nearly 400 students and captured their actual speech across entire days. Not what people remembered saying, what they said. They were testing the stereotype that women talk more than men. The averages came back at 16,215 words a day for women and 15,669 for men, a gap of 500 words. Statistically, nothing. But that wasn't the real finding. The real finding was in the spread. The most talkative person in that study spoke about 47,000 words a day. The quietest spoke just over 500. Read that again. Same age, same campuses, same lectures, same dorms, same recorder clipped to the same shirt. And one person went through that day using 90 times more language than another. 500 words is 4 minutes of speech, across 16 waking hours. And here's the part that unsettles people. That quiet person wasn't absent. They sat in the same seminars, the same hallways, the same dinners as the 47,000-word person. The words were happening. They just weren't coming out. Which raises a question. If you've got a mouth and thoughts and people right in front of you, what exactly is standing between the two? It isn't one thing. That's the mistake everyone makes about quiet people, including quiet people. Your silence has 2 completely separate jobs, and they look identical from the outside. The first is a filter, quiet as quality control. You don't say the thought until it's finished, because you'd rather be slow and right than fast and approximate. You listen to how a group is working before you enter it. You notice the 2 people arguing want the same thing. You hold your sentence for the moment it'll land. When you finally speak, people look up. You've trained them that you don't spend words casually. That's not a deficiency. That's an editor running at full power in real time. The second is a wall, quiet as exit. You've stopped filtering and started withholding. The thought is finished. It's been finished for a while, and you're not saying it because saying it opens something you'd rather keep closed. This is the nothing in the car. This is going flat in an argument, not because you have no position, but because flat ends it faster. This is letting someone believe something wrong about you because correcting it puts more attention on you than you want. Same behavior, same face, opposite functions. One is craft, the other is a door closing.
And here's what makes it hard. You rotate between them constantly, and the switch is silent. You start a conversation genuinely filtering, and 30 seconds in, something makes you feel exposed and it becomes a wall. You never notice the changeover, which means you've been defending the wall using the filter's reasons for years. I just don't say things until I've thought them through. Sometimes true, sometimes it's a door. There's a name for the second one, and it's older than you think. In 1968, Gerald Phillips at Penn State published a paper in Speech Monographs called Reticence: Pathology of the Normal Speaker. He spent 30 years refining it, and the definition he landed on is one of the sharpest lines in the field. Reticent people, he wrote, avoid communication because they believe they will lose more by talking than by remaining silent. Lose more by talking than by remaining silent. That's not fear. Look at the shape of it. That's accounting. Phillips was clear that reticence isn't stage fright and isn't just anxiety. It's a belief about the exchange rate. Somewhere in you, there's a running ledger, and it has decided that words go out at a loss. And the belief runs regardless of whether it's true. You can be articulate, well-liked, good at this, and the ledger still says no. Competence doesn't overwrite it because it was never a competence problem.
Some of it starts before you had a say. Jerome Kagan spent decades at Harvard studying infant temperament and found that about 20% of 4-month-olds are what he called high reactive. They answer anything unfamiliar with distress and hard motor activity. Those babies tended to become cautious, watchful children. In 2003, Carl Schwartz, with Christopher Wright, Lisa Shin, Kagan himself, and Scott Rauch, published a follow-up in Science. They found those same people, now around 21, and scanned their brains while showing them faces. The ones who'd been inhibited toddlers showed a significantly stronger amygdala response to the unfamiliar ones. 2 decades later, in a machine, to a photograph. But temperament only loads it. Something else aims it. Most deeply quiet adults learn the same lesson early, in a house where words had consequences nobody could predict. Not necessarily a violent house, just an inconsistent one, where the same sentence got a laugh on Tuesday and a slammed door on Thursday, where you told the truth once and it came back months later as evidence, where your parents were fighting and you learned the safest thing in the room was a child who wasn't adding to it. So you did the only rational thing available to someone with no power. You couldn't control the reaction, so you controlled the input. That's not pathology. That's engineering. Picture that kid watching a face for the shift before it shifts, testing a sentence 3 times internally before releasing it, finding the one version of the truth that keeps the peace. That's a child doing sophisticated risk management with no training and no help. And both halves came from the same place. The filter was for getting it right. The wall was for getting out. That's the part people skip. They worked. You got through it, and the strategy is why. Nobody comes along afterwards and tells you it's over. Nobody rings a bell and says, the room is safe now. Say the unfinished thought. Nothing will happen. So the system stays on. And with nothing real left to protect you from, it aims itself at whatever's nearest. An ambiguous text, a colleague who used a shorter greeting than usual, a friend asking how you actually are. Machinery built for a house that could turn on you, running full power on a group chat. And you can't just decide to stop, for 3 reasons. First, the illusion. Not saying it feels like doing something. It feels careful, like precision, like maturity, like you're above the mess of people who blurt. Say it plainly. It isn't working. The sentence you didn't say doesn't disappear, it gets stored. Your body doesn't file an unsaid confrontation as avoided. It files it as pending. You're not skipping the stress. You're financing it. Second, the reward. Silence gives you something speech never can. A perfect record. You've never been misquoted, never said the clumsy version, never watched your words land wrong on someone's face. Every unsaid sentence stays flawless forever because it never met reality. That's why people stay here for decades. Third, it's an unfair fight. Silence is instant, free, always available, and has never once been rejected. Speaking is slow, effortful, and can go badly. Reality can't compete. So what does it cost? The obvious layer is you. You go through life underrepresented. The version of you other people know is a heavily redacted draft. Accurate, but missing most of it. You get credit for being calm, and none for what the calm is holding. But that's not the real cost. The real cost lands on other people. Because silence isn't blank. To everyone else, it's content. When you go quiet, the other person doesn't experience nothing. They experience a message. And since you didn't supply one, they write it themselves. Usually with themselves as the cause. Bored, disappointed, judging, done. You let other people write you, and then you resent the draft. And the cruelest part is that the fear is miscalibrated. In 2022, Michael Curtis, Amit Kumar, and Nicholas Epley published a dozen experiments in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. They had people hold deeper conversations than they normally would, with strangers, with colleagues, in parks, with financial executives. Beforehand, everyone predicted awkwardness. Afterwards, it was consistently less awkward than expected, and they felt happier and more connected. Given a choice up front, people predicted they'd prefer the shallow conversation. Afterwards, they preferred the deep one and wished they had them more often. The ledger is wrong. It's been quoting you a price nobody is charging. Then the slower cost of the wall. Relationships rarely end in an explosion. They end in accumulated withholding. 111-second sentences nobody said until there's nothing left in the room to be close about. Now, hear the other side of this, because it's real. The same trait is why you notice what's underneath what people say, and why you catch the thing everyone else talked over. Adam Grant, Francesca Gino, and David Hoffman published work in the Academy of Management Journal in 2011, showing that when teams are full of people who bring their own initiative, quiet leaders outperform loud ones, measured in actual store profits. Not because they're nicer, because they let the room finish and take the good idea when it shows up. That's not a consolation prize. You have an engine installed early for good reasons, and it's genuinely powerful. It just never got an off switch. So here's how to get the wheel back. None of this is talk more.
1. Name which half. The moment you feel the word stop, ask filter or wall. Am I making this better or am I leaving? You'll know within a second, and the honest answer collapses half of it on the spot, because the wall only works while it's disguised as the filter. 2. Give it a job or send it home. Allow the edit exactly one pass. Take the useful improvement, then say the 80% version out loud. Pass 12 isn't refining anything. It's delay wearing a lab coat. Your rough sentence in the room beats your perfect one in the kitchen. 3. Schedule it instead of banning it. Suppression makes it louder. Give it a slot, 10 minutes at the end of the day to rehearse everything unsaid. Then ask the real question. What's in there that isn't in my life? Not the words, the feeling in them. Wanting to be argued with and stay liked. Wanting to be known without having to perform it. That's a requirements document,
and you've been writing it every night for years without reading it back.
4. Outrank it with the body. You can't reason your way out mid-conversation because the reasoning is the trap. Use something physical instead. Feet flat on the floor, one slow exhale. Then start the sentence before it's finished. Say the first 8 words and let the rest arrive on the way. Speech built for landing gets stuck. Speech built for moving doesn't. Here's where this ends. What you have is rare. Most people can't hold a thought without immediately spending it. You can. You watch, you weigh, you wait. And when you finally say something, it's worth what it costs. That's not a flaw with good PR. That's an achievement.
And it belongs to a kid. Some part of you at 7 or 9 or 12 worked out that the safest thing to be was the one who didn't add to it and built the whole system alone in a house that gave them nothing to work with. It worked. It's the reason you got here. Take 1 second and thank them properly. But you're not in that house anymore. The people at your table aren't waiting to use it against you. The thing you're bracing for isn't coming. And the life in front of you, the actual one with actual people in it, is the only one that can ever hold you. It can't hold what you don't hand it. So this week, pick 1 sentence you'd normally file away. 11 seconds. Say it before it's polished, to somebody real, and let it be imperfect. You've been the most articulate person in every room you never spoke in. Try being in one.